Hello, everybody. My name is Jerry Rydrock, and I'm the chairperson for the Mississauga Climate Action Committee. And we're here to welcome you to the first Mississauga Climate Action Earth Day presentation. We're thankful that you could be here with us, remembering Earth Day. This year, it's the 50th anniversary of this global event. Since 1970, Earth Day has been an opportunity to showcase this great planet we call home. We also learn how we are negatively impacting our atmosphere, our forests, waterways, and other natural habitats, as well as our climate and health. Let us consider that the COVID-19 pandemic is a dress rehearsal for the global warming crisis. I might have said the coming global warming crisis, but that would be incorrect because there is enough evidence on the slide, as you can see, that will show the climate crisis is already upon us. So at 1.5 degrees C increase in global warming, we may have runaway global warming happening on our planet. So we formed Mississauga Climate Action last year to do what we can to reverse this global warming trend, so that Earth Day will show us thriving in a healthy, sustainable, and stable planet in the not too distant future. So our vision at MCA is a community where a healthy environment and economy can coexist. And further, our mission is to achieve a net zero carbon emission community in Mississauga by 2050. Our three areas of focus are emissions, education, and lobbying our governments to make choices that are aligned with our vision. Why have we chosen these three strategies? Carbon emissions are what we as a global community must eliminate to ward off the global warming crisis. We will take decades of sustained global efforts and sacrifice to achieve this, but just as long to realize that the planet is restoring itself. One difference between the current pandemic and the climate crisis is that failure to reduce carbon emissions to zero will lead to irreversible global warming, and this will cause unimaginable human suffering. This emission time bomb could result in the biggest world extinction event the Earth has ever experienced. And this is already happening before our eyes. It could spell the demise of humanity as we know it. Burning fossil fuels, clear-cutting our forests for beef production, chemical pollution of our air, land, and water, and over-consuming our resources are just some of the human activities that are taking a toll on our ecosystem. Such human activities reduce the planet's ability to mitigate global warming. Just as our governments are educating us during the pandemic, we at MCA see our role as educator in the discussion of greenhouse gas emissions and their link to global warming. This slide shows where most of our emissions are coming from, and these are the kind of things we would like to help educate the public with. If we don't understand the link between emissions and global warming, how will we ever, as a community, take the necessary steps to reduce our emissions? Would we have physically isolated ourselves during the current pandemic if we hadn't understood the impacts to human lives, to the health of the healthcare system, and other essential services? No, I don't think so. For some, runaway global warming is a much bigger stretch of our understanding, and so it is imperative to make the climate carbon emissions connection and consequences abundantly clear for all of humanity. The difficulty Will we continue to reduce our carbon emissions for the foreseeable future to reverse global warming without actually seeing immediate results to our climate and the planet? I am hopeful because we know from this pandemic that we can change, we do care, and we will unite. Our third focus will be to support our governments to follow through on their plan to eliminate all net carbon emissions by 2050. We will be lobbying governments and engaging your support in this effort. And we need your input. We need your support because everyone has a role to play. We value our Native elders and all other diverse groups for their experience and their wisdom. It is precisely this richness of thought, ideas, and innovation that will help us reverse global warming. And now is the time to act. Tonight, we will have presentations on what global warming is, how it is linked to carbon emissions, and how it affects the land we live off of, and the water we drink, and the air we breathe. We will leave you with clear conclusions on the state of our air, our land, and our water. And we will recommend to you a set of choices to make and definite actions to take. So please stay with us. Send us your feedback by email and through our website and other social media at the end of our presentations.
Okay, I would like to begin by acknowledging the land on which we gather and whom the region of Peel operates is part of the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. For thousands of years, Indigenous people inhabited and cared for this land. In particular, we acknowledge the territory of the Anishinaabe, Huron-Wendat, Anishinaabe, and the Ojibwe Chippewa peoples. The land is home to the Métis, and most recently, the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, who are direct descendants of the Mississaugas of the Credit. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work, play, and live on this land, and by doing so, give our respects to its first inhabitants. We're going to open up with a smudging, and a smudging is to purify, and it's to the body and the aurora energy around us. It is a way to create a cleansing. It's a smoke bath is what we do. So I like to start off by bringing this into me and then do my ears, my eyes, my mouth, my heart to the left. And I like to wash my hands. So I thank you, and thank you very much for allowing us to do this smudging.
Now it's my pleasure to introduce Sam Hussain. He's a medical professional. He sits on our board of Mississauga Climate Action, and he's going to talk to us about the global warming crisis from a scientific point of view. Now I'll hand it over to Sam.
Thank you, Jerry. Hi, my name again is Sam Taha. I'm a family physician working in Hamilton, Ontario. Today I'm going to give you a brief introduction to climate change and global warming. Reading about science is my hobby, in particular physics and climate science. The term global warming and climate change are used interchangeably, but they're not exactly the same. Global warming is part of climate change at large, yet it's the initial and main contributing factor, and is that the atmosphere is warming. And my goal today is to make it very simple to understand climate change. So let's get started. The atmosphere is the key in what happens initially in climate change. The greenhouse gas effect is the ability of gases in the atmosphere in trapping heat and prevent the sun radiation from reflecting back to space by means of scattering and absorption of radiation, or we can call it sunlight. The final outcome of this effect is that light is converted to heat, energy in the atmosphere. The globe, including the oceans, gets hotter. One point to remember is that the greenhouse gas effect is a natural phenomenon, and it is exactly what prevents the Earth from turning into an ice ball. Now, excessive global warming is happening because humans are emitting or pumping more gases in the atmosphere faster than the ability of the Earth's systems to clear them. And this is what triggers the imbalance causing climate change. Now, some argue that climate change could have been caused by other natural phenomena, although that could be true, but it would not happen in the rate we're observing today. There are piles of data to tell us today that our current change cannot be explained entirely by other phenomena. An example of that would be volcanic activity, which we don't see much of it right now. Here you can see the molecular structure of the main gases. CO2 is first, it is main contributor to global warming, and then CH4, also known as methane or natural gas. Methane is rising rapidly, has been rising well in the last decade to alarming rates, and though the concentrations are lower than CO2, it's much more powerful as a greenhouse gas. Other contributors would be water vapor, although it often follows changes in CO2 concentration, and nitrous oxide, which is a common byproduct from using nitrogen-based fertilizers. Now, sadly, this graph shows CO2 on the rise. We almost doubled the amount of CO2 from 280 parts per million in mid-19th century, marking the Industrial Revolution, to about 414 currently. Here's a carbon cycle, which I like a lot. Three things strike me about this graph. First, there's more carbon stored in fossil fuel and like fossils and fossil fuel than any carbon stored in the soil. Second, the deep ocean can store a lot of carbon, 3 times more than the land can store, likely due to the fact that our world is a water world. And third, of the 9 gigatons added emissions by humans yearly, 3 is taken through photosynthesis, and 2 is taken down by the ocean, leaving 4 gigatons technically to accumulate in the atmosphere. At the end of the day, the main take-home point is that the forests and the oceans are doing their best to bring the carbon down, but this is to a limit. Another important point is that more carbon is going into the ocean, causing the ocean to be more acidic, adding major struggle to many life forms in the ocean. Remember, we need photosynthesis and other life forms in the ocean. Our own existence depends on it. Finally, I want to remember that climate change as a crisis really dwarfs COVID-19 pandemic in terms of magnitude of sheer damage in terms of human lives claimed and losses in dollar value. I quote, by 2050, population growth and rapid urbanization could put 1.3 billion people and $158 trillion in assets at risk from river and coastal floods alone. Imagine the other effects of climate change. That's just coastal floods. And this is from Phillips et al., 2018. The difference between COVID-19 and climate change is that climate change is way bigger problem but acting slower. I quote, aside from the coronavirus pandemic, the biggest, most destructive exponential growth processes that we must grapple with today are those associated with global climate change, end quote. From Howard Conruther, a professor in Wharton School. The IPCC made a 630-page report indicating the need to cut down emissions by 50% by 2030 to limit warming to only 1.5 from the pre-industrial level. We have only 8 years left to do that. As you know, limiting warming to 1.5 entails with a good degree of confidence limiting the catastrophic effects of climate change on ecosystems and human populations. To this end, how would I feel optimistic about making a change? I'll make it simple for you. I've listed 5 actions on the personal level that would likely bring your carbon footprint by about 15% almost immediately. First, eat less beef. Second, reduce food waste, compost the rest. Third, reuse and recycle. Fourth, LED lights, entire house. fifth, smart thermostat. Now, the reason why I chose those because you can implement right away without putting a lot of money and effort into it. And this is it for me. Thank you for watching.